Before we get started, I just wanted to respectfully acknowledge that we are here tonight courtesy the Hupatchisitt and Sishat First Nations. We're on their traditional territories. Thank you very much, folks. Quickly here, I wanted to thank the Italian Hall and Events Center. We have Carol Ann, Sydney, and Darian here tonight. So they've set this all up. They've done a beautiful job 2 nights in a row, and we do a lot of business here with the Italian Hall. They're wonderful people to deal with, so thank you very much for that. We're supported here tonight by Vicki and Doug Barber from the District Labor Council, so they do a great job. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Ross Hawes. Ross is our chair of the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, so he did a great job last night, so I'm going to stand aside and turn it over to Ross.
Thanks, Bill. And welcome. It's always nice to see so many people come out to these community forums, an exercise in democracy. A little bit different than last night for those who were here, because last night we had 17 of the 20 candidates. Tonight we have all 6 of our mayoralty candidates. We're going to start with a 3-minute opening remarks from each candidate. We'll start with the candidate on your left and work our way over to the right. Following that, we will then begin taking questions. Our questions are going to be a lottery style. We will draw a number out. If you want to ask a question, you should have received a number when you came in the door. If you didn't, you can go out to the back and they can get you a number. We will also have some questions that we will be asking in between to help move things along. We're going to call out 3 numbers at a time. We'll have all 3 of those folks get in line behind the microphone in the center. And then we will have you ask your question, state your name, ask your question, direct it to one candidate. We will then rotate through a second candidate also answering that same question. Okay? All right, let's begin. Let's bring up our first candidate. And we will introduce Gary Robertson.
Good evening. My name is Gary Robertson. My wife and I chose Port Alberni over 14 years ago and loved not only raising our family in this spectacular community, but I've also had the privilege to serve the sports community as the founder and owner of Alien Sports in Uptown for the past 10 years. A few weeks ago, I finalized the sale of my store to a local businessman, and I'm now available for what I've been studying to do for the past 4 years, to serve you as the mayor of Port Alberni. Tonight we're going to hear a lot of political talk and flowery words trying to convince you whom to support and vote for. If we take a look at the slate of candidates before you, these are nice people. Some I consider friends outside of this contest, and I hope to consider them friends after the election. As for all the platforms, we all want the same basic thing: more affordable housing, less property crime, more skilled jobs, less residential taxes, more effective tourism, less government interference. At least we should want these things. Currently, we have a housing crisis that may well turn into a full-blown tent city by the time the ballots are counted. That would only add to our incredible high crime rate. On whose watch did this happen? What do we have to show for the past 4 or even 8 years? A beach we can't swim in, million-dollar garbage trucks, a painted crosswalk, and everything else is talk. Maybe you can tell by now I'm not in this race to be nice. I'm running to save this city at all costs, to set it back on a path that you and I can trust with our retirement years, a path that can keep our kids employed so that we can have our grandchildren nearby, a path that will reunite families separated between where they want to live and where they need to work. We have seen over the last 8 years, change does not come from nice people always asking for permission. Positive change comes through mutual beneficial cooperation and strategically applied force. For most people, a need to be loved by all stops them from using the force needed to get the job done. That's not me. To accomplish my platform, which is far-reaching, I will need allies. These are the people I'm not willing to alienate, anger, or take for granted. I'm not willing to alienate First Nations, as there are so many common opportunities and crises that we share. It's in our common interest to work together. I'm not willing to anger council members. Whoever is elected will be your dream team, and our focus will be on common goals. I'm not willing to piss off city staff members. These people are the conduits through which all work and vision get accomplished. And finally, I'm not willing to take for granted the taxpayers. As a libertarian, I feel all tax is theft, and I'll work hard not to waste even one of your tax dollars. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Gary. Our second candidate, Mike Rattan.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. 4 years ago, I sought your support to serve on City Council as your mayor, promising to work to foster a diverse and vibrant business community that generates employment and to chart a solid course of community development for Port Alberni. That's been my focus as mayor, and I believe the city is seeing results. During this term, I've met regularly with prominent local, successful business leaders. I've learned much from this. We are fortunate to have these people who are willing to volunteer their time. I'm going to continue to meet with business people. They provide tremendous value for our city and have assisted with our work to stabilize the economy and create jobs. If anyone has an expertise that they think will help to move our economy forward, I invite you to get in touch and we can meet and discuss how together we can help improve our economy even more. Over my time as mayor, I've met many times with seniors, youth, churches, individuals, healthcare workers, and people in forestry, education, government leaders, and officials. In fact, I've met regularly and extensively with many different groups and individuals on a huge range of topics. These topics are ones that impact or have the potential to impact our city. We are seeing new investments in creating new, skilled, family-supporting jobs in aviation and shipbuilding. We've seen the Sand Group make new investments in the value-added sector of the forest industry that also contributes to the security of existing jobs at Catalyst. Business license renewals are up about 15% in the past 2 years, indicating a growing business sector. On the housing front, we've seen many new projects launched, such as Uptown Manor, the Thunderbird Building, Uplands 2, the Anderson Hill development, redevelopment of the old Fairway Market, construction of low-barrier housing, a proposed 46-unit affordable housing project, and expansion of Rainbow Gardens. We have continued efforts to improve the Johnson Road corridor and to revitalize our uptown commercial district and with financial incentives, like the commercial revitalization tax exemption and the facade improvement program. Of course, there's always more to be done. A key priority must be to reduce the incidence of crime and addiction that has been a personal concern since my time as chair of the Alberni Valley Drug and Alcohol Prevention Service. While the recent upspring in crime is part of a national trend, for the past 20 years, our city's crime severity rate has been roughly double the national average. We must find more effective ways to deal with these problems that adversely affect our city's quality of life and reputation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. A third candidate, Sherry Minions.
Hi everyone, my name is Shari Minions and I'm excited to be running for mayor because I'm passionate about the future of our community. I want to spend my entire life in this community and I want my children to be able to and to want to spend their lives here as well. I believe so strongly in the potential that lies within this valley. But I'm tired of being the community with potential. I want us to start moving toward that potential. At some point along the way, we're going to lose the affordability edge that we currently have to draw new people to our community. And when that happens, we need to be a community that people choose to live. Not because we're inexpensive, but because they value the quality of life and the lifestyle that they can have here. My platform is based around balancing good jobs and quality of life. Good jobs and employment are critical to the success of any community. We can't have a strong quality of life without good jobs. But when we look solely at good jobs and we forget about what quality of life brings to a community, we are building a community that will not be successful. I believe we need a shift in focus and a new plan to build a strong economy. I want to see us looking forward to what the trends are and focusing our efforts of new jobs creation on growing industries. I see opportunities here in modular home construction, small specialty sawmills, technology including micro businesses, tourism, home health care, and more. We can no longer look solely at the industries that we know and are comfortable with. We need to expand. We need a range of jobs in this community because we have a range of people living here. Quality of life today plays a huge role in the decisions that people make about where they're going to live. Quality of life means a variety of things to a lot of people. To me, it includes first impressions, taking pride in our spaces, public safety, vibrant business districts, safe and affordable housing, and access to good education. If we want people and businesses to live and invest here, we need to invest here. I believe we can build a strong future by working together in a new way. My style of leadership is based around joint planning and building real relationships. I believe when we get to know the people that we're working around the table with, when we engage them in the planning, we'll build a better plan and we're more likely to carry that plan forward. I'm really looking forward to all of the questions tonight, and I'm thankful to have the opportunity to be here. And the last thing I'll leave you with is that when we elect a mayor, we elect a spokesperson for our community. The person that we choose becomes our representative that we send out into the world. And I think that's a part of the role that we can't overlook the importance of. I hope everybody will get a chance to get to know me a bit better tonight and learn more of what I value. Thank you.
Thanks, Shari. Our fourth candidate, John Douglas.
Healthy economies, healthy lifestyles for a healthier Port Alberni. That is my theme for our community. Thank you everyone for being here. For those of you who are new to our community, thank you for moving here. Welcome to this city, this great city of Port Alberni. My name is John Douglas, and I come from a healthcare career as a paramedic, starting in the streets of downtown Vancouver, and subsequently on the streets and in many of your homes here in Port Alberni. I also had the honor of serving as councillor and city mayor from the years 2008 to 2014. Over the last 4 years, I've been extremely busy in our region, becoming even more deeply immersed in the inner workings of our community, working with one of our local First Nations on tourism management and economic development, then working for the last 3 years concentrating on social planning, mental health and addictions, food distribution and housing solutions here in Port Alberni. I have a fully grown family. They've flown from the nest, and a wonderful and incredibly supportive wife, Donna. Due to my good fortune in having my health career, I've been able to retire. I'm self-sufficient, and due to my experience and network of contacts, I'm ready to go should you decide to elect me as your mayor. Staying deeply involved in our community has allowed me to learn so much more about the links in our society here. The various agencies, small and large businesses, nonprofits, service groups, and the untold armies of volunteers who keep this place we call Port Alberni running. It's also allowed me to keep abreast of our current council over its extended 4-year term. Now, the word transparency was removed from our local political vocabulary shortly after the election of this current council. I will just say that I'm very concerned about some of the practices and some of the decisions of all of this current council, in particular the secrecy, the brain drain of knowledge and skills, in particular the lost opportunities, the lost taxpayer dollars, and the extremely negative impact this has had on our community of volunteers. This rests on the shoulders of all of our current council. You can't be new for 4 whole years. I want to put the word transparency back into our local vocabulary. Having said that, we have the capacity to rebound and correct those approaches with a change in leadership on council. I will be honored to have the privilege and the opportunity to serve as your mayor. I believe in openness and being inclusive. I believe we should institute some changes to allow for greater citizen participation in decision making. Later on tonight, I hope we can talk in more detail about healthy economies, healthy lifestyles, healthy agriculture, healthy housing, healthy services, and I'd like you to help us translate vision into reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Dennis Sauvé.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you for coming out tonight to get to learn a bit more about me and what my campaign is about. Thank you for the Chamber of Commerce and Labour Council for setting this up. My name is Dennis Sauve, again. I'm a retired RCMP, and I've been currently 4 years as your city councillor, and I had that privilege, and I thank you very much for those 4 years. I'm the type of person who respects the mayor's office, and I see things at times that I don't necessarily agree with. I've experienced a lack of transparency and a lack of desire to be part of a team when I'm here to unite. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I value trust, and I want to make the office better for the people of this community, and I know I can. As mayor, I will facilitate working in a cohesive council to create deliverable solutions to have real-life impact. I will lead by example. I will be open and transparent. I will work closely with council to ensure we make honest, realistic decisions that actually benefit the people of Port Alberni. To achieve accountable, responsible governing, our community needs a strong, experienced leader whose values include integrity, honesty, accountability, transparency, respect, and compassion. As mayor, I will continue to devote my retirement years as a full-time public servant for you, my community. I will remain a strong advocate for public safety, responsible governing, volunteerism, youth and senior issues, and I always have an open door policy for all residents who need guidance or assistance. I have created obtainable, actionable goals to create real impact and measurable improvement outcomes. As for seniors, we need to recognize 1/3 of our population are seniors. I will continue to be a strong voice for all seniors. As for accountable spending, which is a major issue with our community, I will use common sense to spend taxpayers' money wisely and address urgent, aging infrastructure needs. To facilitate our city youth appeal, I will inspire young people to live and work and play here. I will make a strong case for council to re-implement the Youth Advisory Committee so they may have a voice. I will improve government relations with First Nations, provincial and federal agencies, and enhance collaboration to meet the needs of our community. Is that done? I thank you very much. I got lots to say.
Thanks, Dennis. And now, Kevin Wright.
Good evening. I'm just going to be focusing on one target plank for this discussion. Business is my passion, and for the last 35 years of my business experience, I believe I'm the right person to help us find and achieve the successful future for our community. My experience in tourism and sales, both here and around the world, have given me the unique way of looking at our community and its potential. I believe I possess a special skill set and vision that sets me apart and gives us an edge when it comes to interacting with communities and businesses outside the valley. I have made numerous attempts to engage this council, and it has fallen on deaf ears. My years in business have given me an opportunity to work with some of the best in the fields of sales and tourism, as well as working with different levels of government. I've received training in marketing and developed distinct skills, mastering demographic modeling and understanding the fluctuating markets of our business today. Our community needs to move to venture out and adapt to more models to become more innovative, and otherwise it will continue to struggle. I first stood in front of our city council in 2009 and asked if they would consider building a small business programs for our community. I said I would especially like to consider working in the uptown area. The council was polite, but the response was less than encouraging. The focus was of big jobs and big pay, and minimum wage jobs had no time for them. I argued that so many of our unemployed community were unskilled and inexperienced and lacked the education to enter into many of the big jobs that they were advocating for, that they had to develop an aggregate of employment for opportunities for a wide range of skills, that they must build jobs for everyone, and if they did not, the long-term effects would be dire. We have a large portion of our community struggling to make ends meet and slipping into conditions that our entire city will begin to suffer for. For decades, this community has focused on an economic model that has left a wide swath of people disenfranchised and invisible. Their lives have become difficult and their futures limited. With the hope of having a gainful employment and a normal life, they have begun to choose escapism over realism in a form of drugs and alcohol, and it will only get worse if we continue to leave them out of our society. Small and medium businesses easily have the most potential to reverse this trend. Subsidies and training models are available to help them with education and assist with new business owners to employ many people with difficult barriers to employment. Taxes are being more and more pushed onto industry and the residents, and with the loss of small business, we are quickly losing the backbone of our economy. If we do not reverse this trend, industry could be pressured to leave and leave the bulk of taxes to residents. Recovery and growth will be much harder to achieve if this happens. I have the skills, I have the training and the experience to begin a new economy, the one that includes everyone and that will help our community grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I know we've had some people who've come in just at the last minute. Hopefully you've found a place to sit, and if you haven't yet received a number and you would like to ask a question, you will need a number to be into our lottery system. It's a fabulous turnout tonight. Hopefully we'll get to all the questions, but there's a good chance we won't. Couple things with asking the questions. I'm going to read out the first three numbers. If I read out your number, please come up and stand in line at the microphone. You will have 30 seconds to ask your question. Please keep it brief to 30 seconds. The briefer you are, the more questions we will be able to ask the candidates. State your name. Ask your question specifically to one candidate. We will rotate through a second candidate asking the questions as we go through the evening. Okay? So if you have ticket number 88088, ticket number 081, or ticket 108, please go up to the microphone. Don't be shy. We got to go here. I'll read those numbers quickly again: 88, 81, and 108. Those are the last three digits of your ticket. Oh, we have someone coming up. Good. But while we're waiting for that one, I'm going to read a couple more numbers. 093, 106, and 067. Sir?
You guys are all chicken shits for not coming up here first, but anyways, congratulations to all 6 of you that are willing to put your next 4 years into the mayoral race. But what's really important is we need young families to grow this economy. And without young families, they're the backbones to our school, our education, industry, businesses. Everything that we do revolves around inviting young families to this community. So my question is, how do you plan to invite young families to start their roots here?
And who would you like to address the question to?
Dennis.
Thank you very much for the question. Young families in our community, we have to be able to offer something for these young families to come in our community. Right now, our community is known for having, outside the community is known for having high crime and so forth, that none of these young families want to come and actually invest or live in our community. I strongly feel that having a safe and healthy community and working with law enforcement and all of our first responders to make sure it's safe for the community. We get that capped, we'll get the young families in our community. Thank you.
All right, and we are going to rotate a second. Yeah, you can applaud, absolutely. We are going to rotate through reverse order on a second candidate responding to the question, so I'm going to ask Kevin to get up and respond to that as well.
I believe young people moving here are going to have to need jobs, and it's one of the reasons why I'm focusing on the economy. They may move here because they have inexpensive housing, but they're going to have to likely commute to somewhere to actually have a job in the community. We have 100 empty spaces in the town, and it doesn't seem to be something that the current council seems to give too much interest in. I had been trying to focus on building a small business development center, and I'm putting my own money into it because I'm trying to create businesses that employ people, that can actually build our economy, that can actually encourage young people to move here. We're not going to get people moving here unless they can get a job that they can actually make a living with. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. We have another question from the floor. Please state your name and who you would like to ask or answer the question.
Okay. My name is Diane Mills. I'd like to ask Sherry the question.
Okay.
I've only lived in Port Alberni for 4 months. What I hear from the previous councils is that everything has been terribly overrun on your budgets of construction, and I'd like to know how we as taxpayers can be protected from the mismanagement of that.
Thank you for that question. So I believe very strongly that we need to look critically at every dollar we spend, taxpayer dollars. I think quite often we start to look at numbers that are small to us, and they're not small to taxpayers. So we say, well, that's only $5,000, that's only $10,000. I believe we need to look critically at every dollar we spend. So a lot of my initiatives are investment into the community, and I believe very strongly in that. If we want a community that people are going to choose to live in, we need to invest in that community. But I'm certainly not proposing a whole bunch of new tax spending. I think we need to look critically at where we're spending our money now and where we can shift our way of thinking on that. So thank you.
Thanks, Shari. I'm also going to ask Dennis to answer that, working backwards.
When it comes to major projects that the city implements, a lot of it is somewhat poorly managed as into the progress of these projects. In my campaign, I recommend that we have a time management software which is accessible to all the directors from every department, that we're able to follow every project's going and see how we're going over or under budget. That way we can keep well account of what our spending is. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Our third question from the floor, and then we'll have a written submission.
Hi there. My name is Ian Benoit, and I have a question for Mr. Kevin Wright. Kevin, just looking at some of your literature here, it paints kind of what I think is a bit of a stark picture about our municipal expenditures on policing. And
Right.
you seem to have suggested a few other ways that we might be able to reconfigure that budget to support another approach to reduce crime other than, arrest our way out of the problem. I'm just wondering if you could describe, if it is possible, that what you would tolerate as a reduction of service in police in order to finance those changes.
Right. Well, I'm not actually asking to reduce the police model at the moment. What I've been seeing is that there's been a huge increase requested for more police officers. My wife works in the courthouse, and we deal with almost all the, I'm personally involved quite often talking to her about all the crime that's going on in the community. A lot of it's predicated on the fact that we're getting people who are being arrested for sometimes minor crimes just to keep the community a little more happy, but once they're arrested, they have a stigma attached to them, and it keeps them in a cycle. And a lot of people just say, well, they should move away, but we actually have people who are born and raised here, they have family structure here, they have very little money, and they can't just pick up and move. Even people with a little bit of money would have to have first and last month's rent to go to another community, and there's no infrastructure there. So if we continuously focus on arresting people and putting them in jail just to make ourselves feel a little bit better, we're going to end up making the problem worse and worse. If you start on working on programs that actually give them an opportunity to get out of that cycle, that'll help us a lot. And what we're seeing a lot of is actually people who are getting clean on drugs, and then they're being put in jail for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Sorry.
All right, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
We're also going to give John Douglas an opportunity to respond to that question.
Thanks. I didn't quite understand the question, actually. It sounded like it was about reduction of services, but evolved into crime and...
What reduction of services would you accept in order to provide more policing, I believe, was?
No. To reconfigure the budget such that, what the literature seems to suggest to me is that we may be allocating, or in the future allocating more money to policing than necessary, given that we could be using that money for programs that could result in a lower instance of crime rather than a response to that crime. So if we are to go about making those changes, is there a level of reduction in service that would be necessary, and would you tolerate that?
Okay, thanks for explaining that. My philosophy is about our budget is we should aim for 0% increases without consulting with the community, and that we should aim at that as the norm. Of course, that's probably not going to happen, but we need to consult with the community about those increases so we know what we're investing in. As far as crime goes, there's so many complexities behind the model that increases crime. There are a number of ways we can deal with that. Part of that is increasing the policing. Part of it is doing things that the city has under the control, such as more community walkabouts, police on patrols, better lighting, no broken windows, less graffiti, all those issues the city has control over, and lobbying the federal government and the RCMP to do what they can in their part. Thanks very much for the question.
Thanks, John. I'm going to read out, are you one of the original numbers that we drew?
106.
Awesome. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you. So mine is a little statement and a question, which is one, we moved here 11 years ago, my husband and I, because we drove through on our way to the West Coast and loved Port Alberni because it was a beautiful city. So that being said, my question is one, what will you do, first of all, to Sherry and anybody else who wants to answer, to beautify our city? We've got lots of money in our budget for streets and roads and maintenance and bylaw, but we have people who literally throw every piece of garbage they have in their yards, in their front yards, and we have roads that look like crap. What do we do to beautify our city to allow people to engage and stop here and stay and want to stay and live here?
Thank you. So I think first impressions are critical to the success of a community. I was driving into Qualicum one day and somebody said to me, by the time you get to the second block of Qualicum, people have already decided that they want to invest in the community because it looks fantastic. We can't undervalue the importance of that. So I think that we need to shift some of our funding so that we can have more pride in place. I believe that we all love living in Port Alberni. We moved here for a reason, but when you drive down Johnston Road, if you look very critically at it, we see a lot of weeds, we see a lot of garbage, we see buildings with paint chipping off. We need to invest in ourselves and find the funding within our existing budget to be able to put a higher importance on those things. I don't think that we will be really successful as a community until we start to value first impressions. It's critical, so thank you.
Thanks, Shari. And I'm going to ask Mike Rattan to also answer that since he would be next, because you should have been next, and then we'll go back to you.
Thank you for the question. The whole point of increasing bylaw is to address some of those issues around the look of properties. Johnson Road is our front door. And we've been saying this for 4 years as a council. Johnson Road is our front door, and we want to make sure that our front door looks as good as it possibly can. So we have done a number of things in order to address some of those concerns about our front door, but even so, when it comes to budget, there's actually very little flexibility in the budget to address some of what we would like to see happen. And the way to get there is to make sure that we plan a little bit, we set aside money over time so that we do actually have the opportunity and the flexibility in order to address some of those issues. Not going to happen overnight, but it will happen over time. It's part of planning. Thank you.
I may not have the floor, but I want to say it's not about just the Johnston core, it's about our community as a whole.
Excuse me, ma'am. Sorry, we have a lot of questions to get through, and I would ask you to respect the format. Thank you. I have 3 other numbers. I'm going to ask those 3 people to get up, and while they're getting to the microphone, I have a submitted question that I'm going to read. It is addressed to Mike, and then the next in order of responding will be Shari. So the next 3 question numbers are 083, again these are the last 3 digits of your number, 052, and 080. So if you want to make your way to the microphone, and while you're getting up there, this question is for Mike. You said that economic development is a key priority of yours. What have you done in your term to encourage development?
During this term, Council has worked really hard to put in incentives we have the most aggressive tax incentive program in the entire province. There's all of the commercial areas in the city are now eligible for tax incentives in terms of investment. We work with many of the large industries. We work with many of the small industries. We create opportunities for a very diverse and very focused program on different kinds, 6 different sectors of the economy, but also diversification within the economy. So everything we do is in order to address issues of employment, address issues of diversity, and address issues of increased participation. Thank you.
Shari?
Thank you. So nice to get to piggyback on Mike on that one, because we are on the same council, so we have been working on the same priorities to date. Another thing that I will highlight, though, that I think is key to economic development is the facade improvement program. So if people aren't familiar with the facade improvement program, that is a program for small business owners to fix up their building facades, and people are more likely to invest in our spaces when they look good. So we actually, in our first year of that program, invested $50,000 into of city taxpayer money, and it spun off $650,000 of investment into our community in trying to make the community look nicer. So that's for small business, and I think often we overlook small business and we talk about what we're working on with the large industries, but small business is 98% of business in Canada, so it's not to be overlooked.
Thanks, Shari. We will now go to a question from the floor. Please state your name and who you'd like to direct the question to, and then ask your question. 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Larry Craig, and I have a question for John Douglas. You've mentioned that you would not wish to increase the city taxes without consulting with the people. Do you have an idea how that consultation would go? And that might apply to also other things that City Council would want to consult with.
Thanks for the question. My concept is that we should set 0 as the guideline instead of it's been 4, 5, 6%. So set it as 0, and then when we veer from that, then have community consultation on significant interests. This could be done through a variety of means, online or through community meetings like we're having right now, which I think we need to have more of. And you know, the way it would go is we would be presented possibly with an investment, or we'd have to do some infrastructure work, and if it's going to cause a 1 or 2 or 3% increase, we're going to consult with the community thoroughly on that and get their approval to go ahead with that. If they want their taxes to go down, we have to close the pool. They're going to be consulted about that. We're going to decide what to do and follow that as the norm. So that's the guideline behind the thinking that I think we need to shift to. Thank you.
Thanks, John. I'd like to ask Gary Robertson to also come up and address that.
Thanks for your question, Larry. As I've mentioned before, I'm a libertarian. I believe every dime I take from you as a government official is theft, and I wish that to be spent in the wisest way possible. What I would do is there's not much expectation that the amount of money that the government needs, that this city needs, will ever go down. It's always going to go up. My goal is to grow the tax base faster than the size of government, faster than the speed that the government grows, so that the amount that you pay on average actually goes down. And I would say that until we can manage that, until we can add enough other properties to dilute the tax base for you, I would be in favor of a freeze on the salaries for mayors and councillors until that happens.
All right, thanks, Gary. Another question from the floor.
Good evening. My name's Heather Koning, and this is a question for Mike Rattan. We've all talked about the increase in affordable housing, or the need for affordable housing, and also strengthening our economy. We have an aging population and also a young population of unskilled workers who are looking for employment at a living wage. Can you be specific at the job opportunities you can provide for seniors who are looking for work, as more and more people are working later in years, and also for that young population to earn a living wage as unskilled workers?
I think I understand that you're wondering what the jobs would be for seniors who are looking for work. Is that correct?
Just that our population is made up of a growing seniors population that are still working or needing to be employed, as well as young people that want to stay in Port Alberni and work, but don't have necessarily education or a skilled trade. What are the job opportunities that our town can provide for that unskilled workforce?
Okay, so right now today in Port Alberni, we have quite a range of entry-level jobs. So it depends whether you're interested in dishwashing, whether you're interested in working in the forestry industry as a laborer in construction, or there are quite a number of entry-level jobs available right today. If you go to the Employment Center, you can find out about those jobs. Our greater concern, though, is that when people show up for jobs, we want to make sure that they're ready to actually do the work that they're being asked to do, that they're going to show up regularly and that they're going to work to the extent that the employer wants them. In terms of seniors, we have an incredible population of seniors with incredible talents, and many of them still want to continue to work. I'm one of them. And these are skills that we don't want to lose as a community. These are values that we don't want to lose as a community. So it's a huge opportunity for us in order to grow the opportunities as far as our base of employment is concerned, our opportunities for the growth of our economy. So thank you for the question.
Thanks, Mike. And Kevin, would you like to take a crack at that as well?
I seem to get all the exact same questions about the economy and building businesses for small businesses. Again, back to the target again. I'm trying to get those 100 buildings back on the mark again. When I first came to the city and made a request to actually do a business program and look at the buildings we had in our community, most of them made estimations that we only had about 50, 60 empty buildings. When it was turned out that we had 109 empty buildings, they were mostly shocked, and I wanted to engage that and try to figure out why those buildings were empty. But in reality, those are sitting there empty, and businesses aren't able to open until those buildings become available again. And I really do believe that building the businesses with social enterprise and social models is actually the target we have to shoot for. We have to encourage businesses to do that. And of course, a lot of the seniors, like you're saying, are actually consuming jobs that would normally be given to young people because they're still compelled to work. And that's where we have to transition and give them more opportunity as well. They're not likely to leave their position because they need to continue working, but we have to find new jobs that are actually available for them. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. And thank you for the question. I'm going to read 4 numbers this time, and I would like to ask you, if your number comes up, please come up to the microphone. Perhaps if I call your number and you're too shy, you can pass it to your neighbor if they would like to come up and ask a question. So 073 73 035 35 077, that's 77, and 049. 49. And while we're waiting for them to get ready at the microphone, I do have a question, another submitted question. This one's for Dennis Sauvé. And Dennis, in your platform, you state you want to eliminate lengthy and redundant administration and remove impending development regulations. How are you going to be able to do this, and what does it mean?
Thank you very much for the question. Any developers that come into our community, they have to follow legislation by following certain time frames, and I call so much red tape, to be able to develop any type of project in our community. And it takes time and time and time. What I'm suggesting is actually engaging with the province, and for those communities that needs development, that needs progress, to make this as a shorter time span as possible for any developer wishing to come and grow and invest in our community. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dennis. And I'm going to give a second candidate a chance to also address that, even though it was specifically addressed to you. And since you were next in the rotation, I'm going to go to John. So John, if you wanted to comment just a little bit about administration redundancies and impending development regulations that you would look to make it easier for development.
One of the things I'd really like to do is to develop a duty-free port here in Port Alberni and lobby with the federal government. They've just recently announced Vancouver Island as a tax-free zone, and I think Port Alberni is just an excellent choice to become a duty-free port. So that's one thing I'd like to work towards, and then decrease red tape and make sure our city is solution-based So when somebody comes in with a business proposal or development proposal, our staff says, how can we help you and how can we help it work? Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Dennis. John. And we will go back to the floor. Again, your name, please, and who you would like to answer the question.
Ian Staton, and the question will be directed to John Douglas. I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and he told me that John Douglas used to be the mayor. And before he was the mayor, he was actually the councillor. Heard a lot of talk tonight about what people are going to do, but I wanted to hear about what John has done for the city of Port Alberni.
Well, that will be pretty specific to John, then. I'm sure there might be a few others who would like to answer, but we're going to leave it with John.
Thank you very much. You know, there are a number of things that were done over the previous council prior to this council for which this council is actually riding on the waves of those successes. And it's not me, it's the previous council that made a lot of initiatives, like the facade improvement program was started on the previous council. The Thunderbird apartments were started, the Colson building being renovated and fixed up, the post office being renovated and fixed up, the sewer lagoon project was started under those. All kinds of big initiatives were started as a result of the work our council did. Thanks very much.
Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Silda, and I have a question for Mayor Rattan and for John Douglas. I would like to know how you will plan to communicate with your council. There's been a lack of communication with both council in the past and council in the present. So I would like to know how you would plan to do that with your council, please. Thank you.
And just before you address that, we're allowing you to address it to one person, Cindy, and then we're rotating through the other reply.
Oh, you're very nice, aren't you?
I need to keep it just...
Mayor Rattan, we'll take it with Mayor Rattan. Thank you.
Great, and then Dennis will be the second answer on that.
You took on more authority than you actually had, apparently. So, Cindy, thank you for the question. The way I establish communication with council is they can reach me anytime by a cell phone, private phone, email, 2 different emails. I meet regularly once a month with each councillor, one-on-one. We also meet both public council meetings and in camera if necessary. There's never a time when council can't get in touch with me to ask me questions. I'm always available, always easily available, and I don't see that changes particularly heading forward. There's all that communication is there. I already spend 60 to 80 hours a week as mayor, and you know, I am easily available for council. Thank you.
Okay, and if it's all right with you, Cindy, I'll ask just Dennis to speak about how he would and how he does communicate and how he would communicate.
The best way to communicate with council, between council, is when the public could actually see it. We had issues in the past of certain council actually meeting together and so forth, and it's not in the public eye. I believe in true transparency. I believe Facebook, social media, is not the place to debate city business. I believe city business should be dealt with in front, on council, and via mail. I've always had an open door policy, and that will never change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Waitman, and my question tonight is for Mike Rattan. Mike, I'm just would like to know what kind of future you see for the forest industry in Port Alberni.
Thanks, Jennifer. Forest industry I see as being diverse. I see it as offering hundreds of jobs. I see it as growing. I see it as being part of the whole economic diversity. Our problem with our forest industry right now is that we actually waste a lot of stuff on the hillside. We don't bring it in, we don't use it, and there is a much better way of using this material going forward. It's paid for after all. Let's bring it in and make sure we use it completely within our capacity to manufacture it here in town. So I see the forest industry providing additional jobs, wasting less in terms of fiber, and exporting more from our port, which isn't really used very, very heavily at all. So I see it growing. And when in the rest of the world, when you think about where are solutions, where do I look for solutions about the use of wood fiber, you think about Port Alberni first. That's where we used to be. We can be there again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Shari, you will be the next to respond.
Thank you for the question. I see that the forest industry as an industry is currently declining, and I think that if we want the forest industry to start to increase in our community, we need to be innovative. We need to start looking and focusing more on secondary, higher value spin-off products. I think we need to look at the trends in the forest industry towards smaller operations. We need to make sure our community is well positioned to accept smaller operations, specialty sawmills. We need to look at what the needs of those industries are today, and the needs of those industries are smaller space, service land. We don't have those things in our community, and I'm proposing that we look ahead to try to create them.
Thanks, Shari. Jack?
Thank you, Jack McClement, and I've been trying to figure out what question I wanted. You called me a bit quick. I'm going to ask this question, I guess, to John Douglas. Made many statements tonight about zero tax increase, transparency, and so on. I was on the council when he was mayor. And I would like to know what changed in the last 4 years when he made a statement many times at council that taxpayers wouldn't mind a 12% increase to get what they want and do things like that. So what has changed, and why did he change his mind?
All right, John.
Thank you, Jack. That's a great question. I guess I came to my senses. You know, I've spent 4 years in the community getting really, really deeply involved in the community, really getting to know the businesses, the small and large, much, much better. I'm in close touch with the large players in our community. I've had conversations with the leaders in our forest industry. I understand a lot better how business works. I understand from the people that I've been working with in the housing field how important it is that they can make do. I understand from talking to the seniors how difficult it can be for them to get by. So I think this is a common sense solution. Make it 0% as the norm. Try and achieve that guideline and consult with the community about any deviation. It's a very simple philosophy. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, John. And this works out quite well because next in the rotation to speak about taxes would be Mike Rattan.
If we were going to stick to a 0% increase, we immediately would be in a position where we'd have to decide which services are going to go. Because inflation alone would mean that we're going to have to go more than 0%. So this council has made a decision last year, the year before, this year, and the next 9 years going forward, that we're going to have our city costs at 1% per year increase, and our city income, wherever it comes from, at 3% per year. That 2% difference over the 12 years means that by the end of it, the money that we get from an expanded forest industry and its strengthened forest industry will become money that is flexible money for us as a community, money that we can invest in infrastructure and truly building our future. Right now, we are dependent on that money. Thank you.
Right. Thank you for the question, and thank you, Mike. All right, I have another 4 numbers I'm going to call out. 109, 109, 061, 61, 056, so 56, and 074. 74. And I do have another question while we're waiting for those 4 people to make their way to the microphone. And we will address this question to Gary Robertson. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer this or not, Gary. I should have pre-read it. The question is, who is responsible for the citizens on patrol uptown? They tend to make our tourists uncomfortable more than they help. So I'm not sure if you're qualified to answer that. We'll give you and Kevin a shot at it.
Yeah, he's sitting right beside the guy with the answers. My impression is that they're volunteers and that they work loosely with the police in town. And as business owners, we certainly do appreciate them uptown. There's probably more of them uptown than there are tourists. And maybe the tourists feel outnumbered. But every once in a while, there's a card from them kind of stuffed in the door when I go to open my business up, and I appreciate the fact that they've walked by that night on their own time and their own dime to check out the doors, make sure everything's locked, and make sure everything's taken care of. So no, I appreciate the volunteer time that they do put in. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, Kevin, do you want to take a crack at that? I would mind. I need you to address it, yeah. Or you can not answer if you don't want to.
No, I can answer. I just want to just be nice. Okay. I do appreciate them being uptown. I know it does cause some disconcernment for the actual merchants uptown. They feel a little bit that there's something that they don't perceive. Uptown merchants actually don't see a lot of what people perceive there to be up there. We've had a lot of complaints from our merchants that they get a lot of people scared to come uptown, and we don't necessarily have the crime that is perceived to be up there. We have a lot of panhandlers, and we have a lot of people who are on the low-end scale of our economy that are lingering and hanging around. Most of them are waiting to get into the bread of life or have been dispelled from the bread of life because at 2 o'clock they close and they go out and walk around. It's just uncomfortable, but it isn't something I fear. I go to work at 4 o'clock in the morning every day. I've never had an incident. I've walked up and they're very polite and they're very courteous, and so it is a perception that they feel that is causing a little bit of an uncomfortable situation for the merchants uptown. So I can see where they feel that way. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate being a good sport. We'll go back to the floor.
Hi, I'm 061. My question is for Mr. Sauve. You campaign on being honest and having integrity, and you've said in the past that you donate your councillor pay to charity, which is a very honorable thing. There's also a strong rumor that you were in bankruptcy in 2014. If this is true, how would a trustee of your bankruptcy allow you to donate your wage instead of paying your creditors? Can you please provide some clarification and clear these rumors? To which way, since 2014, have you been donating your pay, as you say, or is it being used by a bankruptcy trustee?
Okay, I don't know if this question is actually productive as into my service with the city, so I'll leave it to that. Second of all, to be clear, whatever financial difficulties I had in the past, being confirmed or not, is actually what a lot of people in our community are struggling with financial. The biggest answer is, how does somebody rebound from that? And what I do with my city paycheck is nobody else's business but mine. But thank you for the question.
Ring the bell.
That being said, 109. 2014, we had the big Waterfront North study. That seemed to drop off as soon as the new council came in. I don't feel like anything's really been done because of it. And I'll give this question to John. Why do you think, if you're elected, would that continue on? Would you pick that up where it was kind of left off? And to the person who doesn't have the question, why did it drop off, or why do you think it dropped off with the current council?
Okay, and Gary, you'll be doing the second answer. John, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thanks very much. The answer is yes. We would proceed with that study as we are able to do, and carry on. What I would like to do is improvements to our waterfront in a staged and planned and predictable manner over a period of years. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much, James.
Thanks, John. Did you want to reply to that, Gary?
I love that question. We have paid for so many studies over the years. We could probably get killed under the avalanche of them. And I'm sure most of them are sitting in binders up in Pat Deacon's office. And I would love, as your mayor, to be able to wander down to Pat Deacon's office and say, Pat, give me one of those. And read through it and then start asking questions why we haven't completed it. Whether it's how to make McLean's Mill more effective, whether it's uptown revitalization, whether it's waterfront. I'm sure there's 6 or 7 that just since I moved into town 14 years ago that we've had. And there's no need to spend another dime until we follow through with every point in every one of those things.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Jack, am I to assume that you have 2 numbers?
My wife, for the first time in her life, has nothing to say.
You know we're recording this for Sean.
So she...
All right.
Yeah, last night you said some sisters could do it, so I guess a husband and wife are allowed to do it. And I haven't had a lot of time to think of the next question. However, I'd like to ask this one to Shari Minions. Once again, I've been on a council with her for the last 4 years this time, and we've had some good times and some disagreements. However, when it comes to tax increases is the subject that I would like to ask as well. During the last budget time, we had a definite barrier on how much taxes are going up, and then all of a sudden, some people wanted the 6th Avenue to go all the way. We still haven't done it, and that put the taxes up, and then some other things, I guess, had to come off. So what has changed your mind about that tax increase? And my water bill I got today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. I actually voted against our last budget. I was the only person who voted against all readings of the budget. So I haven't changed my mind on that. I'm still firmly opposed to that budget, and the reason is we committed to, as Mike said earlier, holding our operational spending to 1% and using 2% additional to fully commit to infrastructure renewal, and our budget did not see us do that. So we increased taxes at 3%, but we did not fund our infrastructure renewal as we were supposed to or as we committed to. So I did not support that budget because it saw us drawing down our reserves and pushing projects out into future years, and I don't think that's responsible governance.
All right, and with our rotation, Dennis.
Thank you very much for the question. It comes to a point you can only draw so much from a stone. And when it comes to the taxpayers, the reasoning I accepted the budget as is, I understand where Councillor Minions is coming from. There's so much we need to start planning, dealing with our aging infrastructure. To be honest, I would like more to be done in dealing with our aging infrastructure, sorry. But the thing is, it's called good governing and spending within our means and not having to go to the taxpayers and shaking them loose for money. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. I'm going to call out 4 more numbers, and if you could make your way to the center microphone. 078 78, 105 105, 107 107, and 095 95. Sorry, I don't have any other pre-submitted written out questions at this moment. So we have one of our 4 numbers ready to go, so please make your way to the microphone, state your name, you have 30 seconds, and also please identify which candidate you would like to answer.
Good evening, my name is Bruce Mohander. My question is for Sherry.
Could I get you to move just a little bit closer to the microphone, please?
On your website, you say we cannot ignore the reality forestry, wood products, and paper manufacturing industries are in decline. You make mention there's about 1,000 jobs remaining in the forest industry. You make no mention of the estimated 1,500 direct jobs or the retail service sectors in the valley that depend on forest industry. If that is reality, how do you explain the fact that new added value wood products, good paying jobs are being added by the Sand Group pardon me, and other companies interested in new wood product ventures on the SOMAS property? Are you suggesting the community give up on extracting more value and continue with live exports?
Thank you for that question. So I state, and I state it frequently, that traditional forestry is in decline, and I think we need to be looking at secondary processing more heavily. I think we need to be looking at spin-off products. So, you know, what you're talking about is what I very much support. And I haven't actually met you, but I just reached out to someone to get your email to connect with you a few days ago. So I very much want to work with industries like the Sand Group that are investing in our community. Those are good jobs for our community, so I'm certainly not against those jobs. I just think we need to also start to broaden our scope to other industries that are growing industries in Canada, and other communities around us are being very successful with them. So thank you.
All right, and John Douglas, you're next in our rotation, if you would like to respond to that question as well.
Thanks very much for the question. You know, I was talking to Don Demens, the CAO of Western Forest Products, the other day, and he was explaining to me how the challenges of forestry and how it's a global industry and it's changing on a daily basis. So it's very challenging in that industry to predict which way it's going. But as I explained to you once, Bruce, when you asked me what I would do, I will do everything I can to enable forestry to be a solid contributor to our economy and to our jobs. Thanks very much for bringing it up.
All right, thanks, John.
Hi, my name is Bryce Cassavant. I own my home here in town. I have a young family here in town as well, and I've owned a business in town before as well. My question to the panel, I think we have time, is what do you love about Port Alberni, and why should young families care about this town?
Okay, the panel suggests we do a panel. So we're going to have each of them respond. Who wants to go first? You've got 1 minute each.
1 minute.
1 minute.
Okay. So what I love about Port Alberni is that this is a place that supports everybody. This is a place that has so much for families to do. As a parent, you don't actually have to make it happen. It's already here if your kids want to do it. As a place to live, this is a place that you can afford to do what you want to do. This is a place where you can afford to live in your house. You don't have to pay $3,500 a month rent for a 3-bedroom house like you do in the Lower Mainland. This is a place that has good schools, good health, good air, good everything. So why wouldn't people want to move here? Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Shari?
I love a lot of things about living in Port Alberni. I think this is an amazing place to live. I chose to live here because it's a great place to raise a family. I love our trail systems. I love our waterfront. I love that our waterfront is mixed use. It's entertaining for people to be down there seeing what's going on. I love the mountains. I love our recreation programs. I love everything about living in Port Alberni, but I think we also have a lot of room to grow, and we can look at what other communities around us are doing.
Thanks, Shari. John?
Thank you. Yeah, I just love this community. As I explained to somebody here a few years after I moved here in 2004, the community is of such a size that, you know, when I was getting into the rescue group and the search and marine group, all the different service groups, you realize that the community is such a size that you can actually see goals that you want to achieve, and you can actually achieve those goals within a reasonable amount of time. And that's why I love being involved in groups like this and in our council, so we can create a solid to-do list and start ticking those to-dos off, keep our council focused on the city of Port Alberni and what we can do to make it an even lovelier place than it is right now. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Dennis?
When I retired from the RCMP, the first thing you do when you retire is simply pay for your next move anywhere in the country you want to go to spend your retirement days. I actually saved the taxpayers' money because I love Port Alberni. I chose to make Port Alberni my home. I raised my family in Port Alberni, and the fact when I can just put myself in and continue public service through my volunteer work in the community, dealing with seniors, dealing with youth at ADSS and so forth, has given me a loving relationship with the community, and that's what made me love my community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Kevin?
Of course, I'm going to echo the sentiment of everybody up here. We all, of course, love Port Alberni. One of the things that I found frustrating over the last 7 years now is the fact that the city decided to sell the community as the cheapest place to live and not the best place to live. I advocated away from that. I wanted us not to fall into that problem because I knew that eventually we would have speculation purchasing going on in the community, which we are now suffering with. So I really wanted them to stay focused on what was amazing about our community, and that is that this community is very caring and very generous and very warm. When I moved here from Qualicum Beach 9 years ago, I was met with people who instantly invited me to barbecues even though they didn't know who I was, who instantly wanted to get to be my friend, who instantly wanted to share my life with me. And I'm really proud to live in this community. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Gary?
"14 years ago, me and my wife uprooted our family from Victoria and we moved up here, and we did it on purpose. We were looking for inexpensive housing. We didn't know what we were getting in for. I remember the first time we moved into our house, the first day the landlord sent an electrician by, and as the electrician was finishing up, he's like, I got to finish this up really quick because I got to get to a shinny hockey game. And that gave us, moving from Victoria, gave us a real picture of the difference between the culture in Victoria and the culture in Port Alberni. And he said, oh yeah, and by the way, don't forget to go to Smitty's tonight. It's $1.99 pancake night. If you guys can remember that. So he left, and me and my wife kind of just looked at each other and thought, where did we move? But we've fallen in love with the people. We've fallen in love with the culture, the relaxedness of it. We've fallen in love with the fact there's no traffic. And you know, for raising a family, it's second place to none. Whether it's the sports facilities or the rec centers, we just love it here. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. We're going to go back to the floor.
Good evening. My name's Murph Brooks. I've only resided here for 5 years, so I don't know a lot of the council at this point. So I'd like to throw out a roundtable discussion on, we're 8 months away from cruise ships coming into town. Absolutely, when you think about Argyle, it's an absolute disaster for somebody to get off a boat. What are the intentions would you have of cleaning up the downtown? We have a fountain down there that's unmaintained. It's spitting water like it should never do. What would you do to make it a lot cleaner for passengers to get off the boat?
All right, and we will start with you this time, Shari, and we will do another roundtable. If anybody would like to ask a question, please feel free at this time. It seems like the lottery system is not working all that great. So if you do have a question and you don't mind standing, you can please follow right in behind this gentleman here, and we will go through a roundtable on this question. Thanks, Shari.
Thank you. So somebody suggested to me today, actually, that in preparation for the cruise ships, a lot of people are getting out for questions now. In preparation for the cruise ships, we form a city committee of people wanting to help and people wanting to clean up the community. Again, like I stated, first impressions are critical, and that first impression in the cruise ship scenario is first impression Harbour Quay, Lower Argyle, 3rd Avenue. So we very much need to clean up. I think the city has a role in that. But volunteers, in the last question we said, what's your favorite thing about the community? I forgot to say the people. We are so lucky to have such a strong volunteer base in this community, and when we come together, I think we can make a real difference here.
All right, thanks, Shari. We've got a good lineup there now, but we are going to finish this with each of the candidates speaking to this particular issue. Then we'll go back to the floor. So if we could have you up next, John, and you have a minute to respond.
Thank you. Cleaning up our community is like vital. One of the things that we started in the previous council was a sort of have pride in Port Alberni and have an annual cleanup of volunteers from different groups. We had people from CUPE, from the union, from the city management, all kinds of different groups throughout the community came forth. So I think this is another thing that we could initiate again and get that going, not just for the cruise ships, but on a regular basis throughout the community. There's other elements, of course, to do with the cruise ships that we need to look after, which is the train and getting the steam working and getting the McLean Mill working and all those features that are an integral part of a cruise ship visit. So we're going to have to rebuild the structure of the volunteers so everybody's on board to get everything ready so that these cruise ships have a fantastic visit and we can get them coming back on a regular basis to provide input to our economy. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Dennis? And by the way, we have enough people in line now that we will probably just get right to 8:45. So we're going to make a cutoff now at the back of that line.
Thank you for the questions. Cruise ships is something that we've been missing. It's something that's willing to come back. Right. I truly feel that the Chamber of Commerce could play a role in the receiving of these cruise ships and dealing with our tourism. Yep. I've spoke with many, especially with the vintage car collection, that wanted to see who do we get permission to be there and be able to expose everything that is valuable for our community. First Nation tradition, why can it not be there and all that? So it would take a drive from one of the stakeholders to actually initiate this, We base a lot of things on volunteers, but we need to as the city, take a role in this and make sure it comes back. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Kevin?
So in answer to your question, next week we're going to be starting our new art program that I've initiated. I came to the council about 7 years ago and then again 5 years ago to initiate a program to have art pillars going down Argyle. I wanted to build 50 of them to go down, and we had numerous artists in the community that wanted to get involved. The idea from the ask for the city was to actually ask for $25,000 to actually build for the pillars. They declined. They weren't interested in that type of program. At least they couldn't afford it. So now we've actually started the program for free. I've raised $10,000 in the last month or so to actually pay for 4 art pillars to start on 3rd and Argyle. And we're going to actually be going all the way down from Roland Arts Center right down to the Harbor Quay. And we're going to be putting over $1 million worth of art on the streets. The streets and the art is absolutely free. All the pillars are being paid for by local community members and businesses. The art is actually for sale and is owned by the artist, and it will be the largest open gallery in Western Canada. And the hope is that we'll be able to maintain and showcase our culture and our community to people who are visiting our community. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Gary?
I think the biggest thing with the cruise ships coming to town is we can't screw it up like we did last time.
Right.
So we got to make sure that they can actually park. And when people get out, we got to make sure that the merchants at the Harbor Quay are actually open, which was a huge issue last time. So, you know, we hold the leases to that, and that should be part of their agreement going further on. If we plan on having cruise ships on a permanent basis, that they're going to be open no matter what time the cruise ships come in. In regards to Argyle and beautifying Argyle, if people are going to wander up the street to see some of the art that Kevin hopefully is going to have up for that. There's a burnt down building, the old McGill Engineering building there. I would love to get a hold of the landlords there, get some trucks of dirt donated and dumped in there, and then get some BMX kids to kind of make a nice 3-dimensional BMX track out of that place, get the garbage cleaned up, fences taken down. I think that would be a perfect date to have something like that completed. So if people do decide to wander up the street, they're not going to be put off by it.
Good. Thanks, Gary. Mike.
When you head up Argyle, because as a tourist coming off of a cruise ship, once you get to First Avenue, the rest of it's a bit of an embarrassment.
Correct.
So we're well aware of that as a council, and that's why we put $250,000 of city money into that portion of the budget to expand bylaw. And we need to get our bylaw department now to focus on addressing some of those issues, and that's exactly what they're in the process of doing. And they're well aware the cruise ship's coming. This work has to get completed between now and May, and I'm confident that a lot of it will get done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And hopefully that is satisfactory.
Yep, thank you very much.
Great question, thank you. Okay, let's keep moving. 30 seconds, name, question. You pick one, I'll pick one.
Okay. I'm not picking on you, John, but this is for you. I believe years ago, I don't know if it was on your watch or on somebody else's watch, our lovely government came into this town and totally ripped out the pink ward at Echo Village, and people were up in arms. I'm just wondering, is this one of the, if you get elected, sir, going to the government as they have increased health care, and we have more and more seniors that are aging, to bring in a dementia center and also a wound center? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Definitely. This is a big issue for those of you who don't know. The Pink Ward was a ward designed to deal with dementia patients. Now Island Health, in their wisdom over the last number of years, has decided that they can only deal with a certain level of dementia patients, and once they get beyond a certain level, they get sent to the other side of the island. And that's completely inappropriate. Quite often we have spouses, so they're separated. The one spouse has to travel across to Parksville or Nanaimo or Victoria if they can drive. So it's completely unacceptable. We need to get more health services here in Port Alberni in general, like long-term care facility health services that are delivered to the homes that our seniors can live here with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, John. And next up in our rotating answers would be Shari.
Thank you for that question. I think that it's critical that we start to try to bring the dementia care back to the community. On one of the boards that I sit on is Rainbow Gardens, and when the call for proposals for dementia beds came out, we talked about whether or not we would be able to apply, and the regulations were so high that we were not able to make an application. So we have people, and we have care providers in this community already wanting to provide that care who are not able to. So we need to work with Island Health on that. When we're separating people from their families, we're not only separating, we're separating people from their families, but quite often we're separating people from their culture, in the case of First Nations as well, and we can't be doing that. So we need to do all we can to try to bring those back here and change the regulations.
Thanks, Shari. Another question from the floor.
Hi there, my name is Ashley O'Shaney. This question is for Mayor Rattan. In the interest of transparency, can you please explain the purpose of the Business Advisory Committee? It appears to have influenced some of the decisions that have happened over the past 4 years, including the September 2016 decision to take no further action on the Westport Place 20-acre parcel, which could have potentially put multiple lots on the market, creating more tax bases and increase the tax bases there. Can you explain who the Business Advisory Committee is and how that's influenced your decision as mayor? And for any other candidate, how will you bring transparency back to the council?
Thank you for adding that.
Okay, so our business advisory group is a group of people that I meet with regularly, about once every 6 weeks, once every 8 weeks. Sometimes some of them are there and sometimes they're not all there. It isn't, I meet with many groups of people, whether it be Mayor's Breakfast that I inherited from John Douglas and Ken McRae before him. As mayor, I go to lots of people for advice. So I have a group of local business people that I have gone to. Our economy was in a really difficult situation in 2014, and we needed to do something in order to address some of those issues. And I think you'll realize that those issues have been addressed. We have a lot of activity going on, and this is a city where it feels like there's lots of stuff going on. So I guess you're asking me who's involved in that Business Advisory Council? Yeah, so we have Wayne Colson who's involved in that, Todd Nicklin, we have Mike McKay who's involved in that, Dave Kasegi, and we have Junior C. So our Albert C. Jr. So those are people who are highly respected business people in Port Alberni. Thank you.
Thanks.
So for our next person in rotation, which would be Gary Robertson, the question was about transparency.
Yeah, that's a tough question because, in regards to organizations like that, there's obviously a lot of experience on those boards, and I would assume that anyone stepping into the mayor's position would also be meeting with groups of people like that and different stakeholders in the community, different groups. I'd like to see more discussion of that maybe made where some of those influences are coming from and have more of that discussion inside council during the public council meetings. It seems like a lot of stuff happens behind closed doors and then they just come out for the votes. So it makes for very dry meetings, and I'd like to see more of that kind of opened up and discuss the different groups that are involved in those decisions.
Thanks, Gary. Thank you for the question. Next up, sir.
My name is Peter Finch. I have a question for all of them. So who's number 2 on your list?
Who's next in the list would be Mayor Mike Rattan.
Okay, I'll put this to Mr. Wright. We just finished an interesting fire season, so I'd like to know what you're preparing for next year, particularly around the Fire Smart program, what your knowledge of it is, and how you plan on dealing with the fuel load that's sitting around this town.
I am a little disheartened by seeing what's been happening with Western Forest Products, and some of the companies are leaving a lot of waste on the hills. It is frustrating to see that. At the same time, they're not doing a good job of taking care of their mandate to make sure that the hills are being properly maintained and allowing the growth to come back again. As far as what we can do, we still have to put some pressure on them to actually try to get them to do the right thing. I'm also frustrated, of course, that they've locked us out of our own community and locked all the gates so we don't have access to our own backwoods. I understand for the fire safety, but at the same time, they've caused some of their own fire safety problems. That's about all I have to say. Thank you.
All right, and up next in our rotation for the second answer is Mike Rattan.
Fire is one of the things that is probably a greatest threat to us as a city. And our interface is something that we need to address. We need to get rid of some of that fuel load. We need to make sure that we are prepared in the event of a fire, whether major or not. It could easily get out of control. So what I would like to see that we advocate is essentially Flying Tankers 2, that we have here in the Alberni Valley our own dedicated resources that are under the control of our forest companies and not under the control of the wildfire service, so that our companies have their own equipment to address their own emergencies and make sure that we look after our forests, our area first before the equipment goes off to other parts of the province.
All right, thank you.
Hi there, my name is Thomas Spielert. Gary is the one coming up in the rotation next.
Correct.
Right? So I'm going to direct my question at Shari because it's you two that I wanted to get. So my question is, there was a lot of talk yesterday about the housing crisis. My question is, what will you do, as if elected as mayor, either of you, to encourage those of us who own rentals in town and incentivize us to keep our rentals here rather than liquidate them and move to towns that have less property crime and therefore are less risky to our investments?
Okay, before you start, Shari, I'm going to have Gary answer first, and then you're going to be second. I'm staying in my format.
We do have a serious housing crisis right now, and one of the causes that makes me feel like this has been engineered for 10 years is this constant war on landowners and our rights. I have a suite myself, and we need some serious lobbying with the provincial government and with the federal government to change the tenancy acts to give us more freedom. Absolutely. We also need to figure out ways that we can, how do I say this? We can determine that a ceiling that is 1 centimeter too short isn't a safety issue, okay? And you know, people all around the world live in tiny homes. People all around the world live in carriage homes, and we have a building code right now that basically doesn't allow for those things very well. So as far as the housing crisis, I would develop in every possible direction. $300,000 homes, $200,000 homes, apartments, tiny homes, and even suites.
Thanks, Gary. Shari?
Thank you. So we have a huge housing crisis in this community. I think we need to be looking at all aspects of that. And I put a question out on my social media page a couple weeks ago. How could the city encourage people to put suites in their homes? Because that's the fastest way to add housing to our market and add units for the people who can't find units right now. And those are people of all ages. And the thing that I heard more often than not was I would never rent my house because there's not enough protection in it for landlords. And I think it's a shame that we have a lot of good landlords in this community, and the Tenancy Act certainly is kind of hinged for protecting from bad landlords. So I think that while we can't necessarily change the Residential Tenancy Act, we could advocate for some changes to it. I think we can take advantage of some of the programs that are available in our community. INEO offers a good renters program, and they give a certificate, so they're teaching people how to be good renters. I think that we could look to helping them fund that through our community investment program. Then people would know that at least the people that they are renting to have been through some kind of training for how to be a good tenant. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Hi there, my name is Peter Kagi. I'm actually new to Port Alberni, or 15 months in here, and I'm going to go back to jobs. Some of you have mentioned industrial parks in some of your literature, and I guess this question is directed at John. John, what is your idea of industrial parks for Port Alberni? What's it going to do, and where would it be located, and when?
Thank you, Peter. One of the things that's outlined on my website and in my platform is to create special zones for long-term planning, for residential growth, and for industrial growth. The industrial zone that I'd like to propose, and I've had discussions with Island Timberlands specifically in regards to this, is to create an industrial zone on the outlying area of the city out towards what's known as Cameron Shops and the Link Mill sites, many of whom you will know. What this will do is we will be able to invite industry in to develop in a no-conflict zone, no conflict with residential development, and also start us working on a path to developing highway bypass routes outside of the city, relieving the truck routes within the city, and allow us to invite them to come in here and create jobs and add to our economy. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And Kevin, we're going to give you an opportunity to respond to that too.
I believe that everybody here, I mean, most of the people up on council and are running for mayor, they're going to be considering that option. It's exactly what I would look at as well. We only have about a 1/2 acre of industrial land available in our community right now, and if you're wondering why we're not seeing much in the way of industry growth, that's exactly what the problem is. I do expect that it would be a good idea to actually set up a zone just outside of the town and actually probably combine that with our road structure that we've been talking about doing for the last 25 years and doing a ring road. So if you've made a combination program and helped get industry to help us pay for that ring road, it would make it a lot less expensive and help us actually to get that done sooner. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Oliver, and if you'd bear with me for just a couple of seconds. A while ago here, I was quite embarrassed at a question that was asked, and on behalf of the people that think like me, I got to apologize to Dennis. And I'll just ask a question of Mayor Rattan, and you can direct it to any of the other candidates. Mayor Rattan, what would you define the role of leadership as far as the mayor of this community?
So leadership in terms of this community is we're helping to establish the direction for the community, working with council in order to confirm the vision, confirm the strategic plan, and then making sure that the decisions that are made by council and therefore followed out by staff are consistent with that strategic plan. So we look after meetings, we look after the strategizing, we look after making sure that this community is represented insofar as it's following that strategic plan as established by council.
Thank you. And in our rotation, Dennis, you're up next if you would like to take a shot at that too.
Never tell an ex-cop to take a shot, so. Leadership for me it's a different thing. You know, 27 years in the RCMP, 3 of those years being with the United Nations and working in the poorest countries in the world and rebuilding infrastructure gave me my leadership skills. My leadership skill comes with core values as integrity, accessibility, accountability, and transparency. You get those core values, that's when you become a leader. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Our next question from the floor, sir.
My name is David Murray. John, I'd like to address this question to yourself as you are currently not a member of this council. This issue that I would like you to address is the current morale issue of the city employees of the city of Port Alberni. Especially at City Hall, the morale has been totally evaporated. The employees are leaving, the brain drain is excessive, and it is an issue close to my heart. And since the current council did not address this, or has not addressed it, I would like an answer to that question.
All right, John, we're going to have you, and then I'm going to have Shari as well address it.
Thank you. It's a very serious issue. I mentioned in my opening my concern about some of the decisions and practices of this council, for which I believe they all need to shoulder the burden. The brain drain is dramatic. It's been an intentional, done in part by this council, and the effect has been just incredible. People have left in droves, and the resulting thing is a very great loss of morale and lack of respect. that we need to rebuild. And to rebuild that, what we need to do is draw in focus, and touching on the leadership issue that was previously mentioned, that's what I intend to do, to focus on our city, to bring back the respect, and to bring up a to-do list and keep our council focused on that to-do list and get to work on that to-do list. Thanks very much.
It's a huge financial issue. We have just seen the latest that's just gone on.
Yeah, I appreciate your passion. No, I appreciate your passion, but in fairness to the people here who are waiting to ask their questions, I'm going to ask Shari to respond, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
So John said the issues were done in part by our council, and I have to say I think he's giving us too much credit, because the issues that we have right now are completely because of our council. And I take full responsibility in my part in that. We have created an environment of mistrust between staff and council, and we have a long way to go to rebuild that trust. I believe very strongly that we came in when we were elected, we wanted to make big change, and we made that change before we had the knowledge to make the changes that we were going after. So I think we have a long way to go to rebuild that. I believe we need to value the staff that we have. We've lost some very good people, but we have some very good people at the city now as well, and the last thing that I want is to start seeing us lose more new people. So I will work very hard to rebuild that trust.
Thanks, Shari. And I'd just like to add, I know there's a lot of very important issues, and a lot of you are very passionate about them, and I would recommend that you get some of the candidates after. You can have some one-on-ones with them, and possibly they've made some notes, and in their closing comments they'll be able to address some of these as well. But in fairness, I want to make sure we continue to treat everybody fairly. Next question.
Thank you. I want to legitimize my being up here. Can you call 075? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Entertaining.
Pardon?
It would be entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jeff Cook. Lived in the Valley for about 60 years. I guess I'll bring up a name maybe after my question, so everybody has a chance to think about it. When you're elected mayor, what would be your? I heard this at another meeting, at a meet and greet. What would be your first order of business? Because I've heard a lot of comments, your passions, your visions, your platforms. There's a lot there. So what would your first order of business be at your first or second council meeting?
And who would you like to address that to? No, we won't have time to have all six.
Shari, sorry.
Shari.
Thank you. So I believe very strongly that the first order of business from any mayor and council should be sitting down and getting to know each other. I've been on council for 4 years, and there are a couple of people that I don't know still. We really miss that opportunity, and I think that when we don't know the people that we're sitting around the table working with, we are not working effectively together. I want to know why people ran, what's driving them, what they want for the future of the community. So that might sound kind of, I think it's very important. I think that when we miss that step, we are not going to be successful working together. We need to know each other if we're going to build plans together.
And Mike?
First order of business is getting ready for that first meeting. Who's going to be on which committees? What's the process going to look like? How are we going to unfold the meetings? Make sure that the seating order is sorted out. You know, it's pretty mundane stuff. So if you're asking for first order of business, that's what you're thinking about.
All right, thanks, Mike. Our next question.
Good evening. My name is Jan McKay, and I came to the Valley in 1974. I'm going to ask the question with Mike Rattan, because he's the sitting mayor, but I'd like to mention about the trees and the ambience that they were talking about in Qualicum. We can have that here in town if we look after our trees, especially with the heat coming on these last 2 summers. And I wonder whether there's a plan in saving some of our trees, because we do have that ambience coming down with our cherry blossoms on Johnson Road. And I hope we don't have any more of those sad sack trees that got all down and planted in Harper Key. But my question is, what is taxation? Like, how is it the pie dealt with, and how much is for the city people, the taxpayers, and how much is industry? If you could explain that to the people here this evening. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I guess it's just my hearing, but I don't think I understood your question. It was something about taxation and something about trees.
Okay, I was kind of sidetracked with the trees, but the question is for taxation. In the pie form, how much is on the residents of Port Alberni and how much is paid by industry and the pie was reversed
Okay,
before it was
gotcha. Thank
industry.
you. So industry currently pays about 24% of our overall tax bill. And then we have a similar amount, about 20% is paid for by commercial and the remainder is paid for by the residential property.
So it has flipped.
Okay, so does that answer your question? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I think that's fair just to leave that with Mike. Right? Okay, next question.
Hi, I'm Jen Fisher-Bradley. I've lived here since 2004. At the time, my husband was one of the captains of the fireboat in Victoria. He was diagnosed with PTSD, and we decided we needed to put down some roots. We saw a house that was for sale here in Port Alberni in Southport for $40,000, so it was a no-brainer. We moved here, we put down roots, and we've been very happy ever since. I think a big opportunity is overlooked when we don't talk about urban farming, especially when we're trying to attract young people to come to our community. Because you need to remember, young people are very aware of our food and water security issues. Okay, so what I want to know is how do you, anyone who's next, feel your skills are with lobbying the provincial government? Because we need them to pay for the water for our urban farming. The plan would be implemented by the city, paid for by the province, based on health and...
Okay, we have 20 minutes left before 9 o'clock, which is when we promised to have this wrapped up by. We have 2 questions left, so I'm going to have both of these final 2 questions answered by the entire panel, and then we'll go to our closing summaries, all right? So we're going to give all 6 of you, and we're going to start with John this time and work our way back.
Thank you, Jen. I believe the question was about how effective will we be at lobbying the government?
Provincial government.
Yes.
To pay for the water for urban farming.
Okay, thank you. Well, I have very effective lobbying skills. I believe I demonstrated that on a number of occasions in the past, and I will look forward to using those skills to promote not only urban farming, but what I would also really like to promote is agricultural farming and growth in this valley to make us the breadbasket of Vancouver Island on a very, very large scale, so influencing our economy, our health, and our jobs. So thanks very much.
All right. Dennis? Give this one a try.
Well, I got answers. Urban farming, it's always been a dilemma for our community when it comes that we're only allowed to have, I believe, 25% of our property use to be used for urban farming. I really want to advocate that we be able to extend that to have a bigger space onto our private property for such a thing as urban farming. I agree when you're talking about opportunities. We are sitting on agricultural land reserve that is not being used. We talk a lot, but nothing's been prepared. I would look forward to any type of RFPs that will bring some flourishment into this ALR that we have, such as farmers market or something for the community to meet together and actually share and feed each other. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Kevin?
Jan and I have spent a lot of time at our cafe talking about this exact topic. One of the things I've been pushing for and still striving to get to is I'd like to see a 7-day-a-week market open to the public. As a restaurant owner, it's very difficult for me to purchase organic food in the community because it's inconsistent and it's hard to get a hold of on a daily basis. I do believe that we have a lot of young people moving to the community that would be very encouraged to actually have that, but they also need to make an income at it and have access to the public. I put forward a program trying to showcase areas that we could actually do that in a container model. It still sits on Pat's table, unfortunately, but we'll see if we can push that forward. And I really do think that that's going to be a keystone to making it actually viable for our community, because they have to make a little bit of living. But I do acknowledge that we need to actually expand the amount of space in our lands to allow us to actually farm on our own community spaces in our own yards. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Gary?
So I fancy myself an urban farmer, at least a novice one. I'm still learning, and YouTube is very helpful. I do have rabbits. I raise rabbits for meat for my family. I have chickens. I planted 200 tomato plants this year and used a crap load of water. And we're just getting our water bill, not too impressed with it, but you know, expensive tomatoes. So I do have an urban farm policy that I'd like to see. I'd like to see a designation put out by the city, working with whether it's transition towns or other farm groups that are in town to come up with what makes an urban farm, what parameters make an urban farm. With that designation will come a fee, a registration fee that would cover a blanket insurance that the city would hold. That would allow us to apply for grants, whether it's for water conservation materials, rain capture systems, that type of thing. And I'd also like to see somebody who has that designation be able to increase the amount of land that they can cultivate, whether they want to do a market garden, and increase the amount of animals they have. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Mike?
Part of the issue with farming is we waste a lot of water, so we can be far more efficient in terms of how we use the water. My wife and I grow much of our own food on our own property. We have chickens, we've had goats, we've had sheep, we've had all that kind of stuff on our property, and it is in the middle of town. So it is quite possible to do it. But it's also important to understand that 60 years ago, Vancouver Island supplied 47% of its own food. Today we supply 3% of our food. And yet in the Alberni Valley, we have 7,000 hectares of arable land that isn't cultivated. So it isn't the problem with the resource. The problem is with getting people to want to do it. It's a lot of work. So I'd like to see tax incentives to make it possible. It was that way during the 30s and 40s in Alberni, in what's now Northport. We could do it again.
Thanks, Mike. And Shari?
So I have to admit I'm not a farmer. I typically can't grow anything, but my children did accidentally grow 21 pumpkins in our front yard this year. So I'm not a farmer, but I am a business person, and I know that if we are going to encourage people to grow, people are going to want to do that for just beyond their own use. We need to provide a space for people to sell. So I've been advocating very strongly for a public market. Food security is one of the reasons I'm advocating for a public market. But beyond that, I think that a public market, a permanent 7-day-a-week indoor public market, could provide our community with a community hub, which is something that's very much needed for our quality of life and connectivity as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Shari. And we have one final question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Terry Deacon. I'm a longtime resident in Port Alberni. And as an employment service provider, I've really appreciated all the talk about jobs and economic development. I also know how important social development is, and I think it's been totally underrepresented in our past councils, so I want to know how and what you will commit to social development. Thanks.
Okay, we're going to start with you, Dennis.
I've stated once and I stated twice, we have a lot of social issues affecting a lot of our residents in our community that needs to be addressed. Mental health has always been a true proponent as to helping the community in dealing with those issues. With that said, I believe our social planning committee that needs to be a voice for council and bring those issues towards council and see what council can do in working with the community. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Dennis. Kevin?
One of the things I've been trying to do for the last about 6 years, and I've now started this last little bit, is I'm building a business development center, but a keystone part of it is actually going to be social enterprise and social work. We've set it up in a way that we're actually going to be developing small businesses and getting older people in the community to come back and help us in mentoring small business programs. But the very back space is actually dedicated towards social enterprise and social good for the community. And we're making connections with the community members who are running these different social programs to actually have a space to work together with people who want to invest money in making social good happen in our community. Social enterprise is one of the keystone ways that we're going to be able to help us not spend our tax dollars, but help people build businesses in our community that's going to make a difference for us through social good. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Gary?
As mayor, I would host a monthly open house, open to the community, open to stakeholders in the community, and each open house would have one social issue attached to it. That would give us a great idea of the full scope of that social issue, and then using the city's resources, especially the city's land, especially if facilities have to be built. We can provide land to incentivize people to come build the facilities and work with the different organizations in town that do handle those social issues. I believe we should support them in that.
Thanks, Gary. Mike?
We have a social planning committee, and they do offer advice to us from time to time. As council, we've asked that that become a social planning commission and become an actual formal arm of the city. These are good people with amazing backgrounds, amazing skills, and that's one of the things we've asked to see, and we really need to see that. But the other thing is, we need to be pressuring both the federal and provincial governments to put money back into outreach programs, proactive programs in and helping agencies such as the Friendship Center or the Alberni Valley Drug and Alcohol Prevention System. Those services used to have money to do these kind of proactive programs, and they were taken away. Decisions were made perhaps 20, 25 years ago to put that money into other things. We need that back. Our kids need that back. Our families need that back. We can do far more good with proactive than we can with reactive programs.
Thanks, Mike. And Shari?
Thank you. When we talk about social issues, I think that the first thing we always need to talk about is housing. We have a housing crisis in this community, and what we know is that if people are not housed and not housed stably, they are not growing out of their addictions, and they are not bettering their lives typically. So I would like to see us, there's something that's been announced recently, $5 million for a housing needs assessment that will tell you exactly what the needs of your community are based on what you have, based on where you're going. I would like to see us conduct the housing needs assessment so that when we're going to the provincial and federal governments for housing money, we are doing that based on based on information and facts rather than what we feel our needs for our community are. I think we'll be a lot more effective if we're presenting factual information when we're making our requests.
Thanks, Shari. And John.
Thank you, Terry. Very good question. This is where I've learned so much in the last 4 years working with nonprofits that I've benefited from. So we need a social planning commission instituted in the City Council, sanctioned by City Council, that functions well and functions as an umbrella group for all the other groups that do the hard work in our community. There's ACAUS, there's the Shelter Society, there's CMHA, there's the Coos Crisis Center, there's Cool Waters, there's all kinds of groups working in our community, and they have to apply for funding, generally from the Ministry of Housing in Victoria, and we need to make that all coordinated so that one group isn't competing with another group, and decide, you know, okay, you guys go for this funding this year, we'll go for that year, and help coordinate and provide support with letters of support, and we can do all this with very little, no cost to the city, but it's a matter of pulling the links in our community together. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. That will conclude our question and answer portion of tonight's program. We're going to move to our closing remarks. We're going to work backwards in reverse order. Each candidate will have 2 minutes, and we'll begin with Kevin.
This is going to sound like an unusual statement and almost like an ad for my own business, but this is exactly what I was up to. I am often accused of only being interested in Uptown because I have a business uptown. But I want to make it clear that I was advocating for Uptown renewal a full 3 years before I built the Steampunk Cafe. In fact, I built the cafe as a showcase of what you could do and get done, and prove that it was that even in the middle of what was perceived as the worst place you could possibly build a business, that you could be successful. I had never owned or run a coffee shop, but I knew that the Uptown needed one, and I built the coffee shop with the express intent of building connection in our community to create a social space for people to meet and do business and to slow down and really become a community again. I also knew that offering high-quality coffee would entice people to turn off the highway and drive up and to find an amazing cup of coffee. The cafe has achieved some amazing stats and is ranked as one of the best coffee shops in Vancouver Island. The cafe has been featured in numerous publications and regularly receives bookings from around the globe, including reservations from Australia and South Africa. The cafe has 10 full-time employees and 0 debt. In fact, the business has a very large, healthy bank account. The Steampunk Cafe has sold over 75,000 coffees and has hosted 13,000 visitors this year alone. All of those visitors drove off the highway and came to the heart of our community and discovered a whole new city. This is more tourists than the McLean Mill saw this year. And imagine the 10 more targeted community businesses in the Uptown could do. Exactly my purpose. And finally, I wanted to add that I was not born and raised in this valley, but I moved here. And I raised my 4 children here. And I've opened a business here. And I'm very passionate about this community. And if you ever wonder why things seem to stay the same in this town, you might consider getting someone who has an outside perspective, a world experience, to show the community that there's a different way of thinking. And who knows, that might just be the change the city needs. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin. Next, Dennis Sauvé.
Being a voice for others has made me aware of our economic state and social issues that have not been addressed. I've seen what works and what doesn't work, and I know what I do. I do understand the financial constraints and how hard it is for us people. This is why I have created actionable goals. They were developed for being integrated in this community every single day, meeting people and learn the basic and the most fundamental needs of our community. I am determined to unite council. As a team, I get back to the fundamental ways of running a government by setting appropriate policies that create tangible, measurable results that benefit you and all the people of Port Alberni. We have to stop getting caught up with issues, big city issues, and instead realize that Port Alberni is a small community with a heart. It's all about working together as a team and building a team environment. It's about making policies that truly benefit residents. I'm not interested in leaving a legacy, but leaving a united community with town spirit again. Please vote with confidence, knowing that I will be an accessible mayor working diligently for you and the entire community every single day. Thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you, Dennis. John Douglas.
Thank you. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm ready to roll. Family's fully grown. I'm ready to go, ready to get started. There won't be no consulting or studies and no excuses of being new. Ready to get started. But what I'd like to do is close out tonight by sharing some of our community's ideas about a healthier Port Alberni. A healthy community is about creating and maintaining a healthy economy, about creating land and building areas for industry to build jobs. Hence my plan, long-term plan for creating an industrial park zone out of the Cameron Shop, Link Mill areas. A healthy community is about creating areas for long-term residential growth. Hence my plan for a high-end waterfront community development plan in the Shoemaker Bay Arbutus Ridge area. A healthy community is about creating an international aircraft maintenance hub for international clients out at our developing airport. Think about that for a minute. It's about creating a duty-free port here in Port Alberni for international economic growth. It's about creating an international West Coast port that will put Port Alberni on the map as a centralized distribution hub for all of Vancouver Island over the coming decades. all of which will bring us a functioning airport, industrial truck routes bypassing town, additional highway corridors out of town, all of which are sorely needed. A healthy community is about housing for everyone and looking after our seniors so they can live with the dignity and with the respect which they deserve. A healthy community is about enhancing our natural waterfront in predictable and long-term stages, enhancing our recreational programs and our facilities, pool, skateboard park, for families to grow up with and for all ages to stay healthy with. A healthy community is about so much more than what we can discuss here in a few limited conversations. Please, I'd like to encourage you all to reach out and get in touch with me. We have a great community, great visions. Help us translate those visions into reality. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Shari Minions.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody for being here, and specifically I want to thank the other candidates for being here, because this is not an easy thing for anybody to stand up here and answer questions on the spot, some of them challenging questions, so thank you for coming tonight. I want to just say that I think there's commonalities in all of our platforms. There's a lot of good here in all of the platforms, and personally I think that the right leader is going to take ideas from each and every person's platforms and look at what's best for the community long term, and that's what I'll do. I believe really strongly in engaging with the community in ways like this, but also informal coffee shop meetings, that kind of thing. And I believe that when we say engaging with the community, we need to be looking at engaging with First Nations, engaging with our regional district leaders, engaging with higher levels of government. We need to build the relationships necessary to move this community forward. And the last thing that I'll ask tonight is a request that we spend as much time paying attention to the councillors' engagement and the councillors' race as we do paying attention to the mayor's race, because we often really get hyper-focused on who's going to be the mayor of the community, and at the end of the day our city councillors are just as valuable as the mayor, and we need to remember that. So please take the time to research all of the councillors' platforms as well, and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Shari. Mike Rattan.
Again, thank you everybody for putting your names forward. It is not easy to be out in front of everybody and say, this is who I am and this is what I want to do and this is what I want to achieve for you. I believe this is the time to continue with achieving our vision. Working towards a diversified economy that invites families, supports a vigorous social interaction, and is a predictable plan process that fully engages all interested citizens in that process. The question is, what's the message that we want to send? What do we want to send by the vote that we're going to be making on October 20th? Who do we want to lead us forward? I value the forest industry, not wanting to drive it away. I value the taxes, the jobs, the families that it supports. And once again, thank you everybody for coming out this evening. Thank you for engaging in the democratic process.
Thanks, Mike. And Gary Robertson.
You can find my full platform on Facebook at Gary Robertson for Mayor. Or please stop by my campaign office at the front of Alien Sports in Uptown. I'm happy to discuss my stance on any policy. I love this city and want to spend the rest of my life here, but there's some things that need to change. And some people are worth upsetting in order to accomplish this change. If I'm elected, I'll work hard with the help of our councillors to improve this city regardless of who stands in the way. We'll drive out the worst criminals by publishing their names and faces in the local paper and on social media. We'll find ways to redirect the industrial truck drivers that insist on driving through Uptown. We'll disperse the addicts by shutting down the drug overdose site or move it onto hospital land. We'll overtax the hotel owners who insist in standing in the way of a municipal regional district hotel tax and the $300,000 that could be raised for our tourism and low-cost housing industry. We will upset taxpayers in the regional district as we rebalance the cost-sharing equations of our shared facilities. We will displace the homeless by putting them on buses and sending them back to where they came from and not allowing a tent city to form. We will penalize building owners who feel like they can let their buildings sit empty or use them for purposes outside of zoning rules. We will dismiss special interest groups who think they can waste our time trying to change school names or street names. We're at a crossroads as a community, and we need to make a decision as a community. It's very important that you vote. Where we go one, we go all. You have a choice this election. Vote for true leadership or the status quo. Vote for me or more of the same. Let's make Alberni great again.
Thanks, Gary. And there are your 6 candidates for the 2018 Port Alberni mayoralty race. Also like to thank the Labour Council, Jen Mills and Vicki Fader, for their support. And thank you for coming out, because without your support, of course, this process will not work. Do me a favor, bring somebody out to vote who didn't vote last time, and we'll up the turnout. Thank you, good night, and drive safely.